The hum of fluorescent lights filled the dim corridors of Summit Memorial Hospital as Nurse Anna Martinez moved through her rounds. The night shift had its usual ebb and flow, the stillness of sleeping patients occasionally interrupted by a beeping monitor or the gentle creak of wheels as nurses pushed carts from room to room. To Anna, it was a familiar rhythm, quiet yet charged with an undercurrent of urgency. But tonight, there was something unsettling in the air, a tension she couldn't quite place. As Anna approached room 214, she noticed Dr. Vincent Myers standing in the doorway. He was one of the hospital's most esteemed cardiologists, known for his methodical approach and unwavering dedication. But tonight, something about him seemed off. His posture was stiff, his gaze fixated on the woman lying unconscious on the hospital bed. The woman, Sylvia Hawkins, was in a coma following a cardiac arrest 3 days prior. She had no family at her side, no one waiting to hear updates on her progress. Only Anna had checked in on her regularly, ensuring that her vitals remained stable and her medications were administered on time. "Evening, Doctor," Anna greeted, forcing a polite smile as she stepped closer. Dr. Myers barely acknowledged her, his face tight and focused. "Nurse Martinez, you're assigned to Mrs. Hawkins for the rest of her stay. Make sure her medications are delivered precisely on schedule," he ordered, his voice clipped. He slipped his hand into his pocket, fingers tracing the outline of a small vial. Anna's eyes followed the motion, noting the faint shimmer of glass against the fabric. She felt a twinge of unease. "Of course, Doctor," she replied, careful to keep her tone neutral. "Is there anything specific I should be aware of?" "No," he said curtly, glancing away from her. "Just do as instructed." Without another word, Dr. Myers turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Anna watched him go, feeling the prickling weight of uncertainty settle in her chest. She knew Dr. Myers was strict, but his cold demeanor tonight seemed far beyond his usual intensity. As the night wore on, Anna found herself drawn back to Sylvia's room. She reviewed the patient's chart, scanning for any unusual notations or changes in medication. Everything seemed routine, yet the image of Dr. Myers' guarded posture lingered in her mind, a silent alarm she couldn't ignore. Later that night, as Anna made her rounds once more, she saw something that made her stomach clench. Dr. Myers was back in Sylvia's room, the door slightly ajar. Anna could see him standing beside Sylvia's bed, his face shadowed under the dim light, but his hands were unmistakably busy with something she couldn't fully see. Summoning her courage, Anna tapped on the doorframe. "Doctor, is everything all right?" Dr. Myers jerked his head up, eyes narrowing at her intrusion. "Everything's fine, Nurse Martinez. You can go back to your duties." But Anna's gaze dropped to his hand, catching sight of the vial he'd taken from his pocket. It was a small, unmarked bottle filled with a clear liquid, something she didn't recognize. Dr. Myers quickly pocketed it, but not before Anna noted his tense expression. "Of course, Doctor," she replied, backing away. As she turned, her mind raced. What was in that vial? And why had he brought it into Sylvia's room in the dead of night? Once back at the nurse's station, Anna couldn't shake her worry. The other nurses, absorbed in their work, didn't seem to notice her troubled expression. She considered telling one of them, but without any concrete evidence, it felt like a leap. Still, she decided to keep a closer watch on both Sylvia's condition and Dr. Myers' movements. 2 nights later, things took an even stranger turn. Anna noticed that Sylvia's heart rate had dipped suddenly, a fluctuation that didn't align with her known condition. Checking her IV, Anna found it slightly loosened, the liquid dripping far slower than prescribed. A pit formed in her stomach. She tightened the IV and made a note, her thoughts swirling with suspicions. That same night, as she finished her rounds and headed back to Sylvia's room, Anna stopped abruptly. Dr. Myers was standing in the hallway, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. He said nothing, merely watching her as she approached. "Nurse Martinez," he began, his voice low. I expect absolute discretion regarding Mrs. Hawkins' care. Do you understand? Yes, doctor, Anna replied, her voice steady though her hands were trembling. She felt his eyes lingering on her a moment longer before he turned and disappeared down the hallway. After that encounter, Anna's instincts were on high alert. She documented every minor change in Sylvia's condition, every fluctuation in her vitals, determined to ensure her patient's safety. She'd seen enough strange behavior in the hospital to know that sometimes even the most esteemed doctors could harbor secrets. One evening, during an unexpected lull in the ER, Anna returned to Sylvia's room, her mind racing through possibilities. But as she entered, she was met with an alarming sight. Dr. Myers, once again, his hand hovering over Sylvia's IV with a syringe poised and ready. "Doctor," Anna exclaimed, her voice louder than she intended. "What are you doing?" Dr. Myers froze, his face hardening. Slowly, he lowered the syringe, a calculating look crossing his face. "Nurse Martinez, this is highly inappropriate. You're interfering with my patient care. I'm just concerned about Mrs. Hawkins," Anna stammered, refusing to back down. Her eyes locked onto the syringe, recognizing it as one commonly used for insulin. "What are you giving her, doctor?" "Her prescribed medication," he replied coldly, pocketing the syringe. "Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do." Anna nodded, backing away, but her resolve had solidified. This wasn't about respect or hierarchy anymore. This was about something much more sinister. As soon as Dr. Myers left the room, she checked the IV port, noting the puncture marks that confirmed her worst suspicions. In the days that followed, Anna documented everything meticulously. She made copies of Sylvia's records and monitored the patient's condition closely. And with each passing night, her distrust of Dr. Myers grew. But she knew that without concrete evidence, her accusations could ruin her career. One night, Anna sat alone in the break room, her hands trembling as she reviewed her notes. The weight of the decision she faced was overwhelming. Report her suspicions and risk losing her job, or stay silent and potentially put Sylvia's life in jeopardy. Taking a deep breath, Anna reached for her phone. She dialed 911, her heart pounding as she awaited an answer. When the dispatcher picked up, Anna's voice was barely above a whisper as she relayed her fears, feeling the reality of her choice settle over her. "I'm calling about a possible medical emergency," she said, her voice steady. "I believe a patient's life may be in danger, and I need someone to come here as soon as possible." With the call made, Anna knew there was no turning back. She'd chosen her path, one that would test every ounce of her courage and conviction in the face of overwhelming odds. The night felt colder than usual as Nurse Anna Martinez waited for the response team to arrive. She paced the quiet hallway outside Sylvia Hawkins' room, her mind racing through every possible outcome of her actions. Calling 911 was a drastic step, one she had never taken before in her years at Summit Memorial Hospital. But something about Dr. Myers' behavior had set off alarm bells she couldn't ignore, and the image of that syringe hovering over Sylvia's IV haunted her. Minutes felt like hours until two uniformed officers finally entered the hospital through the back entrance, moving quickly but discreetly, as Anna had requested. She met them halfway down the hall, her face pale but determined. "Thank you for coming," Anna whispered, glancing around to ensure no one was within earshot. "I need to show you something." The officers, a seasoned detective named Evans, and his younger partner, Ramirez, exchanged a quick glance before nodding. Anna led them to an empty room nearby, closing the door softly behind them. She retrieved her notepad, where she'd meticulously documented every strange interaction, every anomaly in Sylvia's treatment, since Dr. Myers had taken over her care. Detective Evans scanned the notes, his brow furrowing. "And you believe this doctor is intentionally harming the patient?" he asked, his tone measured but tinged with skepticism. Anna hesitated. "I know it sounds extreme, but I've been a nurse here for years, and I've never seen a doctor act like this. He's been giving her injections that aren't listed on her chart, and he's been unusually secretive about her case. I don't have proof, but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong." Ramirez looked over at Evans, who nodded thoughtfully. "Do you have any way to confirm what's in these injections?" Evans asked. "I can try to access her recent lab results," Anna replied. "If there's anything unusual in her blood work, it might give us a lead." Evans folded his arms, assessing her. "All right, Nurse Martinez, we'll need you to keep this quiet for now. Gather whatever information you can, and we'll look into Dr. Meyer's record. If there's anything suspicious, we'll take it from there." Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you. I'll do whatever it takes to protect her." As the officers left, Anna took a deep breath, her resolve strengthening. She returned to Sylvia's room, checking her vitals and making sure everything was stable before heading to the nurse's station to access the patient's records. She pulled up Sylvia's latest blood work and scrolled through the results, searching for anything unusual. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw it: elevated levels of potassium and an unusually high concentration of insulin. Sylvia wasn't diabetic, and she certainly wasn't prescribed insulin. Anna's hands trembled as she printed out the report, carefully tucking it into her notepad. This was the proof she needed. The next day, as her shift neared its end, Anna's anxiety grew. Dr. Myers would be arriving soon, and she needed to act fast. She decided to approach her supervisor, head nurse Linda Morgan, hoping to gain her support. "Linda," Anna began cautiously as she approached her in the break room. "Can I talk to you about something serious?" Linda looked up, her face a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Of course, Anna. What's on your mind?" Anna hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's about Dr. Myers and his treatment of Sylvia Hawkins. I think he might be administering something harmful to her. There are unusual levels of insulin in her blood work, and she's not even diabetic." Linda's brow furrowed, but her expression remained guarded. "Anna, Dr. Myers is one of our most respected physicians. Are you sure this isn't a misunderstanding?" "I know it's hard to believe," Anna replied, her voice wavering slightly. "But I've been watching him. He's been visiting her room late at night, giving her injections that aren't documented in her chart. I don't think this is a mistake." Linda sighed, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "Anna, you have to understand the risks of making such serious accusations. This could jeopardize your career, and mine." "I know, Linda," Anna said, her tone pleading. "But if we don't do something, Sylvia might not make it. I've already contacted the police." Linda's eyes widened. "The police?" "Anna, that's..." Just then, the door swung open, and Dr. Myers entered, his expression unreadable as he scanned the room. His gaze lingered on Anna for a moment, and she felt her pulse quicken. Did he know? Could he sense her suspicion? "Nurse Morgan," Dr. Myers said coolly, nodding in greeting. "And Nurse Martinez, how is Mrs. Hawkins this morning?" Anna forced herself to stay calm. "She's stable, doctor," she replied, keeping her tone neutral. "No changes overnight." "Good," he replied, giving her a brief, piercing look before turning to Linda. "I'll be checking on her shortly. I trust everything is in order." Linda nodded, her face composed. "Yes, doctor. All protocols are being followed." Dr. Myers gave a curt nod and left the room. Anna exhaled, feeling the weight of his gaze lift as he disappeared down the hall. "Anna," Linda whispered urgently, grabbing her arm. "Be careful. If Dr. Myers finds out you've reported him, he'll do everything in his power to discredit you. You know how influential he is. I understand, but I can't just ignore what I've seen." Anna replied, her voice resolute. "I'm going to make sure Sylvia is safe, no matter what it takes." Linda looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right. But if you're going to do this, make sure you have ironclad proof." With Linda's reluctant support, Anna felt a renewed sense of purpose. She spent the next few days meticulously documenting every aspect of Sylvia's care, comparing it against standard protocols and keeping a close eye on Dr. Myers. She took photos of the unusual punctures around Sylvia's IV site and recorded every fluctuation in her vitals, knowing that each piece of evidence could be crucial. Then, on the fourth night, as Anna made her rounds, she saw Dr. Myers once again slipping into Sylvia's room after hours. She positioned herself outside the door, her heart pounding as she strained to listen. She heard the faint clink of glass and a low murmur of words, too quiet to make out. Her pulse quickened, and she knew she couldn't wait any longer. Gathering her courage, Anna pushed the door open. Dr. Myers whipped around, his expression darkening as he saw her standing there, wide-eyed and defiant. "Nurse Martinez," he said, his tone laced with menace. "You're becoming quite the meddler, aren't you?" Anna's voice was steady, though her heart hammered in her chest. "Dr. Myers, I need to know what you're administering to Mrs. Hawkins. It's not documented in her records, and I have a responsibility to protect my patient." He took a step toward her, his face cold and unyielding. "Do you know what you're risking, Nurse Martinez? Your career, your reputation, everything." Anna swallowed, refusing to back down. "I've already spoken to the police, doctor. They're aware of the discrepancies in Mrs. Hawkins' blood work." Dr. Myers' face twisted into a grim smile. "Is that so? You think anyone will believe you? A nurse over a doctor with my reputation. You'll be dismissed as a paranoid nurse overstepping her bounds." He moved closer, his voice a low, threatening whisper. "Walk away, Nurse Martinez. Forget you ever saw anything, and you might just keep your job." Anna's hands clenched into fists. "I won't abandon my patient. If you're harming her, I'll do whatever it takes to stop you." Dr. Myers' smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. Without another word, he brushed past her, leaving the room with a chilling finality. Anna stood there, shaken but resolute. She knew the risks, but she couldn't ignore her conscience. The next morning, as the sun began to rise over the city, Detective Evans and Ramirez arrived at the hospital, their expressions serious as they approached Anna. She handed them her notes, the blood work results, and the photos she had taken over the past few days. They examined each piece carefully, nodding in approval. "You've done well, Nurse Martinez," Evans said. "We'll be speaking with Dr. Myers soon. With the evidence you've provided, we can take this case to the next level." Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had done everything she could, and now it was in the hands of the authorities. As she watched the detectives make their way to Dr. Myers' office, she knew her life would never be the same. But one thing was certain: she had stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. And as she returned to her duties, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that she had protected her patient and upheld the values she had sworn to uphold. As the detectives moved toward Dr. Myers' office, Anna felt a rush of relief, mixed with a deep, gnawing apprehension. She had taken the right steps to protect her patient, but she knew the fallout would be immense. Dr. Myers was a highly respected figure at Summit Memorial, and challenging him so openly would come with consequences. Anna returned to her station, her hands trembling slightly as she busied herself with paperwork. A few nurses glanced her way, sensing her tension, but she offered a tight smile and carried on. She had to keep herself together, at least until she was sure Sylvia was out of harm's way. 30 minutes later, the hospital's chief administrator, Dr. Helen Monroe, entered the ward. A woman of few words and unyielding standards, Dr. Monroe rarely visited this part of the hospital unless there was a serious issue. Her expression was grave as she walked directly toward Anna. "Nurse Martinez," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'd like to speak with you in my office. Please follow me." The eyes of her colleagues followed Anna as she walked alongside Dr. Monroe, feeling each step like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. When they reached the administrative wing, Dr. Monroe gestured for Anna to sit in one of the high-backed chairs facing her desk. "Anna," Dr. Monroe began, her gaze steady, I've just been informed that you filed a complaint against Dr. Myers with the police. Do you understand the gravity of this? Yes, Dr. Monroe, Anna replied, forcing herself to meet her superior's gaze. I couldn't ignore what I witnessed. Dr. Myers was administering undocumented injections to Mrs. Hawkins, and her lab results showed elevated insulin levels despite her not being diabetic. I had to protect her. Dr. Monroe leaned back, folding her hands in her lap. Dr. Myers is one of our top cardiologists, Anna. Accusing him of malpractice, let alone abuse, is a serious matter. He has built a reputation for excellence here, and there will be many who are reluctant to believe your claims. I understand that, Dr. Monroe, Anna replied, her voice unwavering. But my priority is the patient's safety. I wouldn't be sitting here if I weren't absolutely certain. Dr. Monroe studied Anna for a moment, her face unreadable. The police are currently questioning Dr. Myers, she said slowly. If your claims hold weight, we will take appropriate action. But until this matter is resolved, I'm afraid I must place you on administrative leave. Anna's heart sank. Administrative leave? Yes, Dr. Monroe confirmed. This isn't a punishment, but given the nature of your allegations, we need to ensure that our processes are thorough and unbiased. I expect your full cooperation, Nurse Martinez. Anna nodded, feeling the sting of the decision but understanding its logic. Of course, Dr. Monroe. Take the rest of the day to gather your things, Dr. Monroe instructed. I'll contact you when we have further developments. As Anna walked out of the office, the weight of the situation settled heavily upon her. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but the reality of the hospital's reaction was harder to bear than she'd anticipated. She gathered her belongings from her locker in silence, nodding politely to colleagues who offered sympathetic glances. She spent the next few days at home, pacing and anxiously waiting for updates. The phone calls from her friends and fellow nurses started coming in, each one layered with curiosity, concern, and, in some cases, subtle warnings. Anna, I heard what happened, said Mia, one of her close friends from the ward. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Dr. Myers has a lot of influence. I can't ignore what I saw, Mia, Anna replied, though her own doubts whispered in the back of her mind. If something happens to Sylvia because I stayed silent, I'd never forgive myself. Mia hesitated, then sighed. I know. You're doing the right thing. Just be careful, okay? The days stretched into a week, and Anna felt the strain of isolation creeping in. With her career in limbo, she had little to occupy her time except to worry about the investigation. She spent her days reviewing her notes, mentally replaying every encounter with Dr. Myers, searching for anything she might have missed. Finally, on a quiet Thursday morning, her phone rang. It was Detective Evans. Nurse Martinez, he greeted her, his voice calm, but with an edge of urgency. We need you to come to the station to answer a few more questions. Anna's pulse quickened. Is something wrong? There have been developments, he replied carefully. We can discuss them in person. Anna quickly dressed, her hands trembling as she pulled on her coat. The ride to the station felt surreal, each block passing in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. When she arrived, Detective Evans met her in the lobby and escorted her to a private interview room. As soon as the door closed, Evans turned to her, his expression unreadable. Nurse Martinez, we've completed our initial interview with Dr. Myers, and we found some troubling inconsistencies in his accounts. But that's not all. Anna's heart pounded. What do you mean? Evans pulled out a file and set it on the table between them. We managed to access Dr. Myers' past patient records, and it appears that there have been several unexplained incidents similar to what you reported with Mrs. Hawkins, patients who experienced mysterious declines, unusual blood work, unexplained medical interventions. Anna's stomach twisted. You mean he's done this before? It seems likely, Evans replied grimly. We're still gathering evidence, but this pattern is concerning, to say the least. Anna felt a rush of horror and anger. The thought that Dr. Myers might have harmed other patients, that she might have been just one nurse in a long line who'd missed his actions, made her feel sick. "We're going to need your help, Nurse Martinez," Evans continued. "If you're willing, we'd like you to go on record with a full statement about everything you witnessed. It'll be crucial in building a case against him." Anna nodded, her mind clearing with a renewed sense of purpose. "Of course, I'll do whatever I can to help." Over the next 2 hours, Anna recounted every detail of her interactions with Dr. Myers, her suspicions, and her careful documentation of Sylvia's treatment. She showed Evans her notes and photographs, each piece of evidence meticulously recorded in the hope that it would strengthen the case. As she finished, Evans offered her a rare, approving nod. "You've done good work, Nurse Martinez. Many wouldn't have had the courage to step forward like this." Anna managed a small, grateful smile. "I just want to protect my patients. No one deserves to go through what Sylvia has." When she returned home that evening, Anna felt an odd sense of calm. She had faced the storm and had done everything in her power to bring justice to light. Now it was up to the detectives and the hospital administration to act. 2 days later, the hospital called. Dr. Monroe's tone was professional, yet it held an undercurrent of something Anna couldn't quite place. "Nurse Martinez, after a thorough review, we've decided to reinstate you," Dr. Monroe announced. "Dr. Myers has been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation." Anna closed her eyes, feeling a surge of relief. "Thank you, Dr. Monroe. I appreciate your faith in me." "There's something else," Dr. Monroe added. "A few other staff members have come forward with concerns similar to yours. It seems you've started a much-needed conversation here." In the weeks that followed, the investigation into Dr. Myers' actions grew, with more nurses and patients providing testimony. As each piece of the puzzle fell into place, it became evident that Dr. Myers had been hiding behind his reputation for far too long. Sylvia, under Anna's careful watch, began to recover. Her vitals stabilized, and Anna noticed a small improvement each day. Though still in a coma, Sylvia's chances looked better than ever. One afternoon, as Anna sat by Sylvia's bedside, she whispered softly, "You're safe now, Sylvia. You'll get through this. I'll make sure of it." Anna's reputation within the hospital grew in the wake of the investigation. Colleagues she barely knew stopped by to thank her, expressing their own relief that someone had finally stood up to the toxic influence of Dr. Myers. And as word of her bravery spread, Anna found a new strength in her work, a commitment to never ignore her instincts, no matter the cost. When Sylvia eventually awoke, disoriented but alive, Anna was by her side, holding her hand and offering a reassuring smile. And in that moment, all the fear, uncertainty, and isolation Anna had endured felt worth it. As Anna resumed her duties at Summit Memorial, she felt an undeniable shift in the atmosphere around her. Colleagues she once only greeted in passing now offered her grateful nods, brief words of encouragement, and sometimes quiet conversations in the break room. "Anna, I don't know how you did it," said Beth, a senior nurse, over a cup of late-night coffee. "The courage it must have taken to go against someone like Dr. Myers. I don't think I could have done it." Anna offered her a small smile, though a weariness lingered in her eyes. "I didn't feel brave, Beth. I just knew I couldn't ignore what I saw. I kept thinking about Sylvia and the others he might have hurt." Beth nodded, her face somber. "We should have noticed something. I mean, Dr. Myers had always been demanding, but we thought it was just because of his high standards. I guess we overlooked a lot." Their conversation was interrupted by a voice over the hospital's intercom, calling Anna to Dr. Monroe's office. Exchanging a look with Beth, Anna stood, her pulse quickening as she made her way through the familiar halls. Dr. Monroe had been cautiously supportive throughout the investigation, but Anna knew her patience had its limits. Dr. Monroe sat at her desk, looking more worn than usual. Detective Evans was there too, his face set in a grim expression. Anna's stomach tightened as she took her seat, sensing the gravity of the meeting before anyone spoke. "Nurse Martinez," Dr. Monroe began, her voice measured. "We have some news. The investigation into Dr. Myers has uncovered more than we anticipated." Anna looked between Dr. Monroe and Detective Evans, bracing herself. Evans leaned forward, his gaze steady. "We've obtained additional records showing that Dr. Myers was involved in a series of questionable treatments going back nearly 10 years. It appears he targeted patients who lacked immediate family, knowing there was no one to question his decisions." Anna felt a chill run down her spine. "So Sylvia, she wasn't the first?" "No," Evans replied, his voice grim. "In fact, we've identified a pattern with at least 5 other cases. He administered unprescribed medications, adjusted treatments without documentation, and in some cases, patients declined rapidly under his care without any clear medical cause." Dr. Monroe's face tightened as she spoke. "We believe Dr. Myers took advantage of his reputation, using it as a shield to cover his actions. His brilliance allowed him to mask these discrepancies, and any nurse who questioned him was often dismissed or pressured into silence." Anna's heart ached, both with anger and sadness. She knew now that her instincts had been right all along, but the cost of exposing the truth weighed heavily on her. She'd inadvertently stumbled into a far larger conspiracy of silence than she had ever anticipated. "What will happen to him?" she asked quietly. Evans exchanged a glance with Dr. Monroe. "Dr. Myers is under investigation for multiple counts of medical malpractice and possibly even assault. With the evidence we gathered, there's a strong case against him." Dr. Monroe leaned forward, her tone softening. "I know this has been a difficult journey for you, Anna, but thanks to your courage, we're able to bring closure to patients and families who may have never received answers otherwise." Anna nodded, absorbing the weight of Dr. Monroe's words. She felt a glimmer of pride, but also a lingering sadness for the lives affected. Sylvia's face came to mind, her fragility and vulnerability all too real. "Thank you, Dr. Monroe. And thank you, Detective Evans," Anna said quietly. I want to make sure Sylvia is safe and gets the best care possible." "You have our word," Evans replied. "We'll keep you updated as the investigation proceeds." After the meeting, Anna returned to her rounds, but the gravity of the situation hung over her like a cloud. The knowledge that Dr. Myers had been preying on patients for years haunted her, and as she moved from room to room, she felt a renewed sense of vigilance. Every patient she cared for felt more precious, every small duty more essential. A few days later, while checking Sylvia's vitals, Anna was surprised to see the door open and a young woman enter. She looked to be in her late 20s, with a soft face that bore a striking resemblance to Sylvia's. The woman hesitated, her eyes drifting from Anna to the unconscious figure on the bed. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you the nurse who's been taking care of my aunt?" Anna nodded, offering a warm smile. "Yes, I'm Nurse Martinez. And you must be Clara Hawkins," she replied, stepping closer to the bed. She reached for Sylvia's hand, her fingers gently brushing against the frail skin. "I just found out she was here. No one from the hospital contacted me until everything started happening with that doctor." Anna felt a pang of guilt on behalf of the hospital, but tried to focus on comforting Clara. "I'm so glad you're here. Sylvia's condition is stabilized, and she's making slow progress. We're hopeful that she'll wake up soon." Clara looked at Anna, her eyes filling with gratitude. "Thank you for watching over her. She doesn't have much family left. And, I know she would have been alone if it weren't for you." For a moment, the two women shared a quiet understanding. Anna felt a deep connection to Sylvia and her niece, bound together by the challenges they had faced. She stayed with Clara, explaining Sylvia's condition and the steps they were taking to ensure her recovery. It was a small moment, but it reinforced Anna's commitment to the patients she served. In the days that followed, Clara became a regular presence in the hospital, sitting by Sylvia's bedside, talking to her, and brushing her hair gently. Anna often found herself drawn to the room, checking on both Clara and Sylvia, feeling a sense of responsibility and kinship with them. Then, one evening, while Anna was on her break, she noticed a new face at the nurse's station. A young doctor with a gentle demeanor approached her, introducing himself as Dr. Michael Grant. He was Sylvia's new attending physician, assigned by Dr. Monroe to ensure that her care remained a priority. "Nurse Martinez," he said, offering a kind smile. "I've heard quite a bit about you, how you've gone above and beyond to protect your patient. I want you to know that I'll be working closely with you to make sure Sylvia has the best possible care." Anna felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since the ordeal began, she felt a genuine sense of relief. "Thank you, Dr. Grant. It's good to know she's in safe hands." Dr. Grant nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's been a difficult time for everyone here. But you set an example, Anna. You reminded us all of what we're here for, the patients." As the days passed, Anna worked closely with Dr. Grant, who not only ensured Sylvia's treatment, but also took an active interest in the well-being of the entire staff. His presence was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that the hospital could be a place of healing, not fear. Meanwhile, the investigation into Dr. Myers continued, with more evidence surfacing. It turned out that several nurses who had once worked closely with him had left the hospital under questionable circumstances, many of them voicing concerns that had been ignored or dismissed. The hospital's administration faced mounting pressure to address not only Myers' actions, but also the culture that had enabled him. One afternoon, as Anna walked into the hospital lobby, she was met with a surprise. A press conference had been set up, reporters and cameras scattered around the room. Dr. Monroe was at the podium, flanked by the hospital's board members and representatives from the police department. Anna stood at the back, watching as Dr. Monroe addressed the crowd, her face a mixture of regret and resolve. She spoke about the investigation, acknowledging the hospital's failure to act sooner and promising changes in policies to protect patients and staff alike. She commended Anna for her courage, publicly recognizing her as the catalyst for these necessary reforms. Listening to Dr. Monroe's words, Anna felt a swell of emotions. She hadn't sought recognition. Her only goal had been to protect Sylvia and prevent harm. But seeing her efforts validated publicly brought a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. After the press conference, a few of her colleagues approached her, offering hugs and words of appreciation. Even Beth, who had initially warned her about Dr. Myers' influence, expressed her admiration. "You did it, Anna," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You made a difference." Later that evening, as Anna sat beside Sylvia, she felt a peace settle over her. She had stood up for her beliefs, faced down a powerful adversary, and in doing so, had protected not only Sylvia but countless others. And as she looked at Sylvia's calm face, she felt a quiet certainty that, one day, Sylvia would wake up, and they'd both share a story of resilience and hope. The days turned into weeks, and the investigation into Dr. Myers' actions continued to unfold in ways that stunned both the staff and the hospital's administration. Nurses and former colleagues came forward with stories that painted a haunting picture of a man who had wielded his authority as a weapon, pushing boundaries under the guise of medical expertise. For Anna, however, life had settled into an unusual calm. She was back in her familiar routine, caring for patients with the same dedication that had always driven her, but with a renewed sense of purpose. Dr. Grant was a steady presence, not only ensuring Sylvia's care, but also creating an environment of trust and openness among the staff. One afternoon, as Anna reviewed Sylvia's chart at the nurse's station, Dr. Grant approached her with a warm smile. "I wanted to let you know, Anna," he began, his voice tinged with excitement. "Sylvia's showing signs of neurological response. It's faint, but it's there." Anna's eyes widened, her heart pounding with hope. "She's responding." "Yes," he replied, nodding. "It's small, but it's a start. With the right therapy and continued care, she could regain consciousness. Overwhelmed with emotion, Anna felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She glanced toward Sylvia's room, a rush of gratitude flooding through her. This was why she had fought so hard, why she had risked her career and her reputation. To protect her patients, to ensure they had a fighting chance. Dr. Grant placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done so much for her, Anna. I truly believe your dedication made all the difference." Anna offered a grateful smile, though words felt inadequate. She returned to Sylvia's room, sitting by her side and gently holding her hand. "You're a fighter, Sylvia," she whispered, her voice soft. "Keep fighting. You've got so many people rooting for you." As the weeks passed, Sylvia's small responses became more pronounced. Her fingers twitched, her eyes moved beneath her closed lids, and occasionally, a faint sigh escaped her lips. Clara was overjoyed, visiting every day with stories and words of encouragement that seemed to resonate even in the stillness. Then one evening, as Anna was preparing for her night shift, she received an unexpected call from Detective Evans. His tone was serious, but there was a hint of warmth that reassured her. "Nurse Martinez, I wanted to update you on Dr. Meyer's case. We've officially filed charges against him for medical malpractice, and there's more." Anna's grip tightened on the phone. "More." Evans cleared his throat. "We've uncovered evidence suggesting that Dr. Myers had been working with certain pharmaceutical companies. He was conducting unauthorized trials on his patients, administering experimental drugs without their consent. Sylvia and several others were used as test subjects." Anna felt a wave of nausea wash over her. He was experimenting on them." "Yes," Evans replied, his voice heavy. "And because of your report, we've been able to alert the authorities. The pharmaceutical companies involved are now under investigation as well." The revelation left Anna shaken, but it also filled her with a fierce determination. The extent of Dr. Meyer's deceit was staggering, but knowing that her actions had brought him to justice provided a sense of vindication she hadn't anticipated. The hospital made an official announcement, severing ties with Dr. Myers and instituting new policies for oversight on treatments and clinical trials. For the staff, it was a much-needed sign that things were changing for the better. Anna became somewhat of a quiet hero within the walls of Summit Memorial, her courage inspiring others to stand firm in their convictions. One day, as Anna was preparing to check on Sylvia, Clara approached her with a timid smile and a gift-wrapped box in her hands. "This is for you, Anna," Clara said, her voice filled with emotion. "I can never thank you enough for what you did for my aunt. Without you, she wouldn't be here." Anna accepted the box, surprised but grateful. Inside, she found a delicate necklace with a small silver pendant in the shape of a guardian angel. "It's beautiful," Anna murmured, her fingers brushing over the pendant. "Thank you, Clara." Clara's eyes glistened with tears. "No, thank you. You've been her guardian angel through all of this." The gesture touched Anna deeply. She wore the necklace every day, a constant reminder of why she had chosen this path and the impact she could make, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. But as the hospital continued to adjust to its new policies, there were still traces of unease. Some senior doctors viewed Anna's actions with skepticism, seeing her as a disruptive force rather than a hero. Rumors circulated, and occasionally, Anna caught whispers of disapproval. She knew that not everyone appreciated her decision to go against Dr. Myers, and she felt the weight of their scrutiny. Dr. Monroe, however, remained steadfast in her support. During a private meeting, she addressed Anna's concerns directly. "Anna, I want you to know that what you did took incredible bravery," Dr. Monroe said, her voice steady and sincere. "I understand that some of your colleagues may be resistant to change, but rest assured, the board and I fully support you. The work you've done has set a standard we're committed to upholding." Anna nodded, feeling a sense of validation that eased her lingering doubts. "Thank you, Dr. Monroe. I worry that my actions might have made things harder for some of the staff." Dr. Monroe gave her a reassuring smile. Change is never easy, Anna. But because of you, our patients are safer, and our staff can speak up without fear. You've given everyone here a voice, and that's a legacy you should be proud of. As the meeting concluded, Anna felt a renewed sense of purpose. She returned to her patients with a determination that burned brighter than ever, knowing that each action she took had a ripple effect, touching lives in ways she might never fully see. One afternoon, while making her rounds, Anna was called to Sylvia's room. Her heart skipped a beat, wondering if it was the moment she had been hoping for. She arrived to find Dr. Grant and Clara by Sylvia's bedside, both wearing expressions of astonished joy. Sylvia's eyes were open, blinking slowly as they adjusted to the light. Her gaze shifted around the room, her face showing a mix of confusion and recognition. "Anna," Clara whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "She's awake." Anna stepped closer, a smile spreading across her face as she took Sylvia's hand gently. "Welcome back, Sylvia. You've been through quite a journey." Sylvia's lips parted, a faint, raspy whisper escaping. What happened?" Clara leaned forward, wiping her eyes as she explained the basics, leaving out the more traumatic details for now. Anna stayed by her side, reassuring her and answering questions as they arose, knowing that this was the beginning of Sylvia's long road to recovery. In the days that followed, Sylvia's strength gradually returned, and with it, her memory. She recalled fragments of her time in the hospital, moments of Anna's gentle care, the sound of Clara's voice, and a lingering sense of security that had carried her through the darkness. During a quiet moment together, Sylvia looked at Anna, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "Thank you, Anna, for everything. Clara told me. She told me what you did to protect me." Anna smiled, squeezing her hand. "It was my duty, Sylvia. I couldn't let anything happen to you." Sylvia's voice was soft, but steady. "You didn't just protect me, Anna. You've changed things here, for everyone." As she continued caring for Sylvia and other patients, Anna felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her actions had sparked a transformation within the hospital, one that reached far beyond the walls of any single patient room. Policies had shifted, minds had opened, and a culture of accountability had begun to take root. One evening, as Anna left the hospital, she gazed up at the building with a sense of pride. She'd faced down fear, challenged the status quo, and stood up for what was right. And though she knew there would always be challenges ahead, she was ready to face them with the same courage that had carried her this far. The necklace Clara had given her glinted in the moonlight, a constant reminder of the impact one person could make when they refused to stay silent. And as she walked into the cool night air, Anna felt a peace that had eluded her for weeks, a peace rooted in the knowledge that she had truly made a difference. Months had passed since Sylvia Hawkins had first arrived at Summit Memorial Hospital, and since then, the landscape of the hospital and Anna's life had changed irrevocably. Dr. Meyer's malpractice case had reached national headlines, and Anna's role in exposing the truth had drawn attention far beyond the walls of the hospital. Reporters requested interviews, advocacy groups reached out to her, and even colleagues from other hospitals sent her messages of gratitude and encouragement. Despite the media attention, Anna tried to maintain her usual routine, finding solace in the steady rhythm of patient care. For her, the work had always been about the people who depended on her, the vulnerable, the frail, the ones who needed an advocate in a world that often overlooked them. She never saw herself as a hero. She was simply a nurse doing her job. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Anna walked into the hospital for her shift, she noticed a familiar face waiting in the lobby. Clara Hawkins stood near the entrance, holding a bouquet of flowers and beaming with joy. "Anna," Clara called out, waving her over. Beside her, Sylvia sat in a wheelchair, looking stronger and more vibrant than Anna had ever seen her. Anna's heart swelled as she approached, her eyes filling with tears. "Sylvia, you're up and about." Sylvia's smile was gentle but radiant. "Thanks to you, Anna. And Dr. Grant, of course. But you You gave me a second chance. Anna knelt beside Sylvia, taking her hands warmly. You're stronger than you know, Sylvia. You did this. I just helped along the way. Sylvia chuckled softly, her voice steady and warm. Oh, don't be modest. Clara's told me everything. You fought for me when no one else would, even when it put your own career at risk. I don't know how to thank you. Clara stepped forward, placing a hand on her aunt's shoulder. We wanted to thank you in person, Anna, and to let you know that you'll always be a part of our family. Anna felt a deep gratitude rise within her. She had spent so many nights worrying, wondering if her actions had been worth the risks, if she had done the right thing. But seeing Sylvia here, alive and well, was the answer she had been seeking. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Sylvia, Anna whispered, her voice catching with emotion. You have no idea how much this means to me. They spent a few minutes together, talking and laughing, until it was time for Anna to begin her shift. As she hugged them goodbye, she felt a profound sense of closure, a peace she hadn't realized she needed. She watched them leave, Sylvia wheeling herself with newfound strength, and knew that her decision to stand up for Sylvia had been the right one. Later that evening, while making her rounds, Anna was approached by Dr. Grant. He wore a thoughtful expression, and as he drew closer, she could see a hint of excitement in his eyes. Anna, he began, his tone both serious and kind. I wanted to talk to you about a potential opportunity. Curious, Anna set down her clipboard. What is it, Dr. Grant? Well, given everything that's happened here, and the policies we've implemented because of your actions, I've been thinking about ways to make these changes permanent, he explained. We need someone to lead an initiative on patient advocacy and safety, a role that would ensure these reforms are upheld and that staff members feel empowered to speak up when they see something wrong. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she absorbed his words. You mean, you want me to lead this? Yes, Dr. Grant said with a nod. You've shown that you're willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. You have the experience, the compassion, and the courage to make a real difference. And I believe this role would allow you to help patients and staff alike in ways that go beyond day-to-day nursing. The offer took Anna by surprise. She had never imagined herself in a leadership role, but as Dr. Grant spoke, she realized how much this position aligned with her passion. She had always been an advocate, someone who couldn't ignore injustice, and this role would give her the platform to make systemic changes. After a moment of thought, she met Dr. Grant's gaze, a smile forming on her lips. I'd be honored, Dr. Grant. I accept. Over the following weeks, Anna transitioned into her new role as the hospital's first ever patient advocate and safety officer. The position allowed her to interact with staff and patients from all departments, ensuring that every voice was heard, every concern addressed. She collaborated with nurses, doctors, and administrators, drafting protocols and training programs focused on patient rights, ethical treatment, and whistleblower protections. Her role brought her into contact with patients and families from all walks of life, each one with unique needs and stories. She listened to them, offered guidance, and became a bridge between them and the hospital administration. Her desk became a sanctuary for those who felt lost or unheard, a safe space where they could express their fears and frustrations. One day, as she was organizing files, she received a handwritten letter from a former nurse who had left the hospital years earlier due to the toxic environment under Dr. Myers. The letter thanked her for her bravery, sharing that many nurses had stayed silent out of fear, but that her actions had given them hope. Tears welled in Anna's eyes as she read, moved by the realization that her efforts had rippled far beyond what she had ever anticipated. As the months passed, Anna's influence reshaped the culture of Summit Memorial. Nurses and other staff members felt more empowered to report concerns, knowing that they wouldn't face retaliation. Dr. Monroe openly praised her work, acknowledging that Anna's courage had catalyzed a shift toward greater transparency and accountability. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within Anna herself. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a confidence that had been hard-won through her struggles. Her role as a patient advocate gave her a purpose that transcended the typical duties of nursing. It allowed her to protect not only the physical well-being of patients, but also their dignity and trust in the medical system. On one particularly busy day, as Anna walked through the hospital lobby, she noticed a familiar figure waiting near the entrance. It was Detective Evans, his hands tucked in his coat pockets as he scanned the bustling hallway. "Detective Evans," Anna called, making her way toward him with a smile. "Anna," he greeted her warmly. "I just came by to let you know that Dr. Meyer's trial concluded yesterday. He was found guilty on multiple counts, and he's been sentenced." A sense of finality settled over Anna. "It's over then." "Yes," Evans replied. "Thanks to you." They shared a quiet moment, both reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. Evans looked at her with genuine admiration. "You know, Anna, you've done something remarkable. You didn't just bring justice for Sylvia, you changed an entire institution." Anna smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "Thank you, Detective Evans. I couldn't have done it without your help. You gave me the courage to keep going." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well, if I ever need a patient advocate, I know exactly who to call." With a final nod, he left, and Anna watched him go, feeling a profound sense of closure. The chapter with Dr. Myers was finally behind her, and she could now focus entirely on her new role, her mission. As the seasons change, Anna continued her work, each day reaffirming her commitment to her patients and colleagues. Clara visited often, sometimes bringing Sylvia along, and the three shared stories, laughs, and even moments of silence that held a world of understanding. One evening, as Anna closed up her office, she looked around at the empty hallway, the walls adorned with photos and thank-you notes from families she had helped. She traced her fingers over the guardian angel pendant that Clara had given her, feeling its cool weight against her skin. The hospital was quiet, the fluorescent lights casting a soft glow over the empty corridors. She thought back to that fateful night when she had first questioned Dr. Myers, when the choice to speak out had felt like a leap into the unknown. Now, standing here, she knew she had made the right choice. As she walked toward the exit, a sense of peace settled over her, a peace rooted in purpose, resilience, and the knowledge that she had truly made a difference. Anna's journey had been fraught with challenges, but she had emerged stronger, with a new mission and an unwavering belief in the power of one voice. And as she stepped into the night, the hospital behind her, and the stars shining above, she knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the same courage that had brought her this far. For she was, and always would be, an advocate for those who could not advocate for themselves, a guardian for those in need, and a nurse whose heart would never waver in the face of adversity.